Welcome back to the Growl with Hank, episode 16. I am your host, Hank Brewski, and this past week has been one of the most consequential weeks I have covered on this show. Tuesday, 2 earthquakes hit Venezuela, 7.2 magnitude foreshock. 39 seconds later, a 7.5 magnitude main shock. 1,450 people confirmed dead so far, over 46,000 still missing. 250 buildings collapsed, and in the rubble of La Guaira, Virginia Task Force 1, FEMA's elite urban search and rescue team, pulled an infant alive 5 days after the quake. American firefighters, far from home, running toward danger again. Friday, an Iranian drone hit an oil tanker called the Kiku in the Strait of Hormuz. Saturday, the U.S. struck 5 Iranian targets in response. Sunday, Iran fired ballistic missiles and drones at U.S. bases in Bahrain and Kuwait. President Trump threatened that Iran, quote, will no longer exist. A Qatari citizen was killed. And then, today, both sides stood down. Talks resume tomorrow in Doha. The Supreme Court overturned a 91-year-old precedent today, Humphrey's Executor, the case that has limited every president for nearly a century. That case is dead. The implications are huge. We will get into it. And 3 firefighters were killed Saturday on the Utah-Colorado border, fighting one of the largest wildfires in the country. 145 million Americans are at risk during this week's heat wave. Coffee up. We have a lot to cover. Let us go. Time for the Bears Brew. 4 stories. Let us go. Tuesday, June 24th. 6:04 p.m. local time. 2 earthquakes hit northwestern Venezuela, near a town called San Felipe in Yaracuy state. The first earthquake was a 7.2 magnitude. 39 seconds later, the second one hit at 7.5 magnitude. Seismologists call this a doublet. 2 distinct earthquakes with nearly identical waveforms hitting almost on top of each other. It is rare, and it is devastating. Because the 2 quakes hit 39 seconds apart, most people did not have time to evacuate their buildings between them. They were still trying to figure out what had happened from the first one when the second one collapsed the building around them. Northwestern University seismologist Emil Okel explained that to CBS News. The shallow depth of both quakes, just 12 and 6 miles deep, meant maximum damage at the surface. The numbers as of today, Monday. 1,450 confirmed dead, likely an undercount as rubble is cleared. Over 3,150 injured. And here is the staggering one. 46,600 to 68,900 people are reported missing, depending on which tracking database you use. The UN says over 50,000. That is a city the size of Boca Raton, Florida. Gone. Either trapped, displaced, or unable to reach loved ones because cell phone signals are out. Now I want to tell you about the heroes. Because there are heroes in this story, and they are Americans. The United States deployed Virginia Task Force 1, a FEMA urban search and rescue team based out of Fairfax County. We also deployed California Task Force 2, based out of Los Angeles. These are some of the most experienced search and rescue crews on the planet. They have worked the World Trade Center after 9/11. They have worked Haiti. They have worked Turkey. They have worked Nepal. And this week, they are working Caracas and La Guaira. On Sunday, Virginia Task Force 1 pulled an infant out of the rubble of a collapsed building, 5 days after the quake. Alive. The acting president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, wrote on X, quote, "In these hours, each life is hope for Venezuela." On top of the teams, the United States has pledged $150 million in humanitarian aid. $50 million through the World Food Program and International Medical Corps. $100 million to the UN Pooled Fund. The Pentagon has deployed cargo planes, helicopters, ships, and a Marine Corps Major General is on the ground coordinating military relief. Starlink is providing free service. And get this, the U.S. Treasury issued a special license suspending most economic sanctions against Venezuela through October to make sure aid and equipment can flow freely. This last point matters because there is a political backstory here. The acting Venezuelan president, Delcy Rodriguez, took office in January after the previous president, Nicolas Maduro, was captured and removed by the United States. So when this earthquake hit, the U.S. was facing a country whose government we essentially installed. And the moral question was clear. Do we let our sanctions block aid to disaster victims? The Treasury said no. The right call, period. Mexico, Spain, Switzerland, the UK, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, China, and over a dozen other countries are also there. International cooperation in a disaster is the one area where humanity still mostly gets it right. If you want to help, donate to the International Medical Corps at internationalmedicalcorps.org, or the Red Cross, or Save the Children. Verified charities only. Avoid GoFundMes from random people on Twitter. Real disasters bring out real scammers. Story 2. Last week I told you the Iran ceasefire was holding, but with friction. This week, it almost broke. And then it almost broke harder. And then today, both sides stood down. Here is what happened, in order. Friday morning, Iranian drones attacked the oil tanker Quake in the Strait of Hormuz. The Quake was using the alternative shipping lane near Oman, not the Iranian-controlled route. Iran said vessels using non-Iranian routes were violating their authority over the strait. The U.S. said the attack was a ceasefire violation. Saturday morning, the U.S. military struck 5 Iranian sites in response: missile and drone storage facilities, coastal radar sites. Sunday, Iran responded. The IRGC launched ballistic missiles and drones at 2 U.S. bases in the Gulf: Al-Assad Air Base in Kuwait, the U.S. 5th Naval Fleet's Port Salman in Bahrain. A drone hit a residential apartment building in Muharraq, Bahrain. Iran said they targeted, quote, 8 important infrastructures of the child-killing U.S. Army. Most of the strikes were intercepted. No U.S. casualties were reported. But a Qatari civilian was killed when his fishing vessel was caught in the military activity area. Trump's response on Truth Social was nuclear. He posted, quote, Iran will no longer exist, end quote, if Iran does not honor the ceasefire. That is, the President of the United States threatening the annihilation of a country of 90 million people. From a Truth Social post. And then, today, Monday, both sides stood down. The U.S. issued a statement confirming that vessels can now move freely through the Strait of Hormuz. No new attacks reported today. President Trump announced that the technical talks on the MOU will continue tomorrow, Tuesday, in Doha, Qatar. At Iran's request, according to Trump. Iran sort of confirmed but is still asserting control over Hormuz. Now, what does it mean that this almost blew up and then almost got contained? 2 things. 1. The 60-day window we covered last week, which runs through August 21st, is officially under serious strain. Hardliners on both sides nearly killed the deal in 72 hours. 2. The fact that we got to a stand-down today says cooler heads, somewhere, prevailed. Either Trump's national security team, or the Pakistani and Qatari mediators, or pressure from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, who issued strong condemnations after the Bahrain strike. Something stopped the slide. What does it mean for your wallet? Oil prices actually came down today on the stand-down news. WTI crude is at $70.50 a barrel. That is down from over $100 during the war's worst spike. Brent is at $73. Gas should keep falling if this deal holds through July. Story 3. Today, the Supreme Court issued a major ruling that you need to understand even if it sounds boring at first. Because this one reshapes the relationship between the president and the federal government in ways we have not seen since 1935. Here is the background. In 1935, the Supreme Court decided a case called Humphrey's Executor. Long story short, the question was whether President Franklin Roosevelt could fire a member of the Federal Trade Commission just because he wanted to. The court said no. The court ruled that Congress can create independent agencies with leaders who can only be fired for, quote, cause. Things like inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance. Not just because the president wants someone new. Why did that matter? Because for 91 years, Humphrey's Executor has protected the people who run independent agencies from political pressure. The Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Reserve, hundreds of others. They have all been able to make decisions without the president being able to fire them for not following his political agenda. That is what people mean when they call those agencies, quote, independent. Today, the Supreme Court overturned Humphrey's Executor. The president now has broader power to fire heads of independent agencies. This is going to be huge for the FTC, for the FCC, for the SEC, for the Federal Election Commission. Every independent agency in the federal government just got a lot less independent. But, and this is interesting, in a related ruling today, the court also upheld a lower court decision that, at least for now, President Trump cannot fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. The Fed is a special case because of its role in the economy. The court is treating Fed independence as a separate question for another day. So Lisa Cook stays, for now. Other Supreme Court news today. The court restricted the use of geofence warrants, which is when police get warrants for all phones in a certain area at a certain time. That is a privacy win. The court also upheld grace periods for late-arriving mail-in ballots, rejecting a challenge from the Republican National Committee. That was a 5-4 ruling with Chief Justice Roberts as the swing vote. Watch for the political fallout. Why does Humphrey's executor matter to you? Because the agencies that regulate the food you eat, the air you breathe, the safety of your workplace, the security of your investments, the way elections get audited, are all about to become more politically influenced. That can be good or bad depending on the president, but the safeguards we have had since FDR's first term are gone. We will dig deeper in cause and effect. Last story, and this one hits me in the heart. Saturday, on the Utah-Colorado border, 3 firefighters were killed battling one of the largest active wildfires in the country. They were on the line. Fast-moving winds, erratic fire behavior. They did not all come home. The fire is still burning. Crews are still working it. Governors in both states have declared emergencies. Utah has imposed July 4th fireworks restrictions in affected counties. Heat and wind are making the conditions about as bad as wildland firefighting gets. We will share the names of the 3 when they are officially released. They deserve to be named. Add to that, 145 million Americans are under heat alerts this week. The Mid-Atlantic, the Plains, the South. Heat indexes are pushing 105 to 115 degrees in parts of the country. If you are in those zones, check on the elderly. Check on your neighbors. Hydrate. Do not leave kids or pets in cars even for a minute. This is the dangerous summer that climate scientists have been warning about, and it is here. Quick other notes. 3 firefighters killed in Utah, Colorado. Heavy rain and flooding killed more people in Kentucky and Tennessee. France's heatwave death toll has passed 1,000. Europe is in the middle of an unprecedented heat dome. Knicks rallied from 29 points down to beat the Spurs in Game 4. Largest comeback in NBA Finals history. They lead 3-1 going into Game 5. American tennis legend Chris Evert announced her ovarian cancer has returned. Send her your good thoughts. Toledo manhunt still active 3 weeks in. The 20th ICE detainee death of 2026 was reported. A 63-year-old Mexican man named Felix Alcorta Rodriguez at a core civic facility in Texas. The UN is calling for independent investigations into the pattern of deaths. Pause and effect time. And today I want to dig into Humphrey's Executor, because this is one of those rulings that is going to shape the next 30 years of American government, and it deserves a real explanation that does not require a law degree. Let me explain what independent agencies actually do, why they were set up, and what changes now. Imagine you are running for president. Your campaign donors include big tobacco companies, big oil companies, big pharma, big tech. You win. Now you take office, and you have these powerful regulatory agencies that have to decide whether your donors get to do what they want. The Federal Trade Commission decides whether mergers go through. The FDA decides whether new drugs get approved. The SEC decides whether your donor's bank gets fined. The FCC decides whether your donor's media company gets approved for a deal. Each of those decisions can be worth billions of dollars to your donors, or punitive to companies that gave to your opponent. Now, imagine that you, the president, can hire and fire the heads of those agencies at will. What happens? Easy. The agency heads make decisions that favor your political agenda. Mergers your donors want? Approved. Investigations into your enemies? Opened. Investigations into your friends? Closed. Regulations your donors hate? Reversed. Regulations that hurt your enemies? Strengthened. The agencies become an arm of the campaign. That is the whole reason Congress created independent agencies in the first place. Starting in the early 1900s, Congress wanted certain decisions to be made by experts, based on facts and law, not by political appointees who can be fired tomorrow. That is why agencies like the FTC have boards of commissioners with staggered terms. So no one president can clean house and load up the agency with loyalists in one go. The president nominates commissioners, the Senate confirms them, and they serve their full terms regardless of who is in the White House. Humphrey's Executor was the Supreme Court case that gave that system constitutional protection. In 1935, FDR fired an FTC commissioner because they disagreed with him. The commissioner's family sued. The court ruled that Congress had the power to limit the president's firing authority over independent agencies. That ruling has stood for 91 years. Through Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, Trump 1, Biden, and now Trump 2. Every president has worked within that framework. Today, the Supreme Court overturned it. The argument from the majority is that the Constitution gives the president all executive power, and limits on the president's firing authority are limits on executive power. The argument from the dissent is that Congress has the power to structure the executive branch in ways that protect democratic functioning. The majority won. What changes for you, the regular American? Short term. The FTC commissioners who are currently serving can be fired by the president if he is unhappy with them. The FCC, the SEC, the Federal Election Commission, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the National Labor Relations Board. All of these are now subject to direct presidential firing power, which means decisions on mergers, fines, election rules, product recalls, and union complaints are now going to be more politically responsive. Long term. Every future president now has unprecedented control over agencies that were designed to be insulated from politics. President Trump can fire commissioners who do not advance his agenda. So can President Newsom in 2028 or whoever comes next. So can the president after that. Whatever your politics, the consolidation of executive power matters because politics swings. The tool you build for your team, the other team gets to use next. We have said it on this show before. Here is the silver lining if there is one. The court did not touch the Federal Reserve. The Fed remains independent for now. So monetary policy, interest rates, money supply, those decisions still have insulation. The court is saving that question for another day. But the writing is on the wall. If they wanted to keep the Fed strictly insulated, they would have said so. What can you do? 3 things. Number 1. Pay attention to who gets appointed to which commissions over the next year. The Senate is supposed to confirm these people. Push your senators to ask hard questions. We need commissioners with technical expertise, not just political loyalty. Number 2. If Congress wants to push back, they have tools. They can codify independent agency protections in statute in different ways. They can hold confirmation votes longer. They can use the budget process to defend agencies. Push them to use the tools they have. Number 3. The market and civil society have a role here. When regulatory agencies become politicized, businesses lose predictability. Investors lose confidence. International credibility falls. Watch how rating agencies, the courts, and business groups respond to the next round of appointments. They are powerful constituencies, and they prefer rule-based regulation. This is the structural story of the year so far. Humphrey's Executor is dead. The implications will play out over decades. Pay attention. Time for the growl. And this week, I am not growling. Not in the angry sense. I am growling in the way a bear growls at the people it loves to let them know they matter. I want to talk about firefighters. Because in the last 6 weeks, I have had to bring them up on this show 3 different times. And every time I do, I think about how little we collectively talk about them. So let me list it. Episode 14. Kharkiv, Ukraine. Russia ran a double-tap strike on a fire scene. They hit a building, waited for first responders, then hit the responders. 5 Ukrainian firefighters were killed in their gear, on duty, helping victims. I said back then I wanted their names known. This week, Utah-Colorado border, a massive wildfire. Erratic winds. 3 American firefighters killed on the line. They were not retreating. They were not slow. They were doing the job they signed up to do. They got caught by a fire that was bigger than the equipment they had to fight it. And then there are the Americans pulling babies out of rubble in Venezuela right now. Virginia Task Force 1, California Task Force 2. They are not firefighters in the strict definition. They are urban search and rescue specialists. Most of them came up through the fire service. They left their families at home in Fairfax and Los Angeles. They are working 16-hour shifts in 90-degree heat in a country with limited running water. And on Sunday, they pulled an infant out of a collapsed building. 5 days after the quake. 5 days. Alive. All three of these stories have the same DNA. People who, when others run away, run toward. The Kharkiv firefighters did not have to be there. The Utah 3 did not have to be there. The Virginia and California teams did not have to be there. They chose to put their bodies between a disaster and the people who could not save themselves. I am a veteran. I serve my country, and here is what I want to say. Most of the people on this earth go their whole lives without ever doing the thing those people did. Most people, when they see fire, run from it. That is how the human brain is wired. The pull to safety is hardwired. To override that instinct and run toward the danger requires something special. Training, yes, but also a kind of person who has decided in their bones that other people's lives matter more than their own comfort. There are not enough of those people. There are never enough. I want to growl at something specific. The way our culture talks about heroism. We use the word for athletes who win games, for singers who write good songs, for wealthy people who start companies. None of those people are heroes. They are accomplished. They are skilled. They might be admirable. But heroes are the firefighters who do not come home from Utah. Heroes are the Ukrainians who get hit by the second strike. Heroes are the FEMA team in La Guaira pulling a baby out at hour 120. Heroes are the cops in your town who run into the school shooting. Heroes are the EMTs and the nurses and the paramedics. The next time you see a fire truck, wave at it. The next time you walk past a fire station, walk in and say thank you. The next time your town has a 4th of July parade, find the firefighters in the lineup and tell them. They will not act like it matters to them. But it does. Because most of them have funerals coming. They have lost their brothers. They have lost their sisters. And they live with the knowledge that they might be next. 3 Americans died on a fire line this weekend. 5 Ukrainians died last week in a war crime. A bunch of Americans are in Venezuela right now in 90-degree heat pulling people out of buildings. They are the ones holding the world together while the rest of us scroll our phones. Pay attention to them, honor them, and do not let their names disappear from the news cycle in 48 hours. That is my growl. That is episode 16 of the Growl with Hank. Quick recap. 2 earthquakes in Venezuela killed at least 1,450 and left over 46,000 missing. Virginia Task Force 1 and California Task Force 2 are on the ground pulling survivors out. America has pledged $150 million in aid. Iran and the U.S. almost broke their ceasefire this weekend before standing down today. Talks resume tomorrow in Doha. The Supreme Court overturned a 91-year-old precedent today, expanding the president's power to fire heads of independent agencies. 3 American firefighters died on the Utah-Colorado border. 145 million Americans are baking in this week's heat wave. Plus, inflation easing as gas drops to $3.80. WTI crude at $70.50. The Knicks took a 3-1 series lead with the largest comeback in NBA Finals history, and the 20th ICE detainee died this year. Independence Day is this Saturday, the 250th anniversary of America. Spend some time this weekend thinking about what we have built, what we are about to inherit, and the people who hold it together. Hug a firefighter. Thank a veteran. Call somebody who matters to you. If you got something from this episode, share it, especially the Venezuela story and the firefighter growl. We do not say enough about the people who run toward the fire. Help me change that this week. Subscribe wherever you listen. YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Leave a review. Tell a friend. 16 episodes deep, the bear is not slowing down. I am Hank Brewski. This is The Growl. Stay sharp, stay free, and I will see you next Tuesday.